number of casualties. If the government of Nigeria will take out the army, for instance, the military, it's not going to help because they will be dispersed. They are dispersed in the region. So how can a Nigerian army, for instance, follow the terrorists around the countries around the borders? It needs a lot of tactics. I mean, it is not easy. Just like, for instance, any country who is facing terrorism, it takes a long time.
It needs more plans to fight this growing influence.
Who are the financial
of the terrorist
supporters?
Group. Well, Amb.Soad Shalaby, former Assistant Foreign Minister for African Affairs, thank you for joining us. And now we move to South Sudan, where the South Sudan army has said that the backers of the former Vice President Riek Machar attacked the oil-rich town of Bentiu. Details on the following report.
Sudanese rebels have shelled government positions in the oil-rich town of Bentiu a day after the UN launched a $1.8 billion aid appeal to stave off famine in the war-racked country. The spokesman for the country's military, the Sudan People's Liberation Army (SPLA), said rebels backing former Vice President Riek Machar destroyed a mounted vehicle and captured a tank in Bentiu near the border with Sudan. Philip Aguer said the SPLA was pursuing the rebels, calling Tuesday's attack a clear violation of an agreement signed earlier this month that called for an end to hostilities. Defense Minister Kowol Manyang also said the military would act in self-defense. Bentiu has been hotly contested between the two sides, with control of the town changing hands several times. South Sudan has been plagued by violence since December 2013, when President Salva Kiir accused his sacked deputy Machar of attempting a coup. Fighting broke out in the capital Juba, setting off a cycle of retaliatory massacres across the country. Much of the violence pitted the ethnic Dinkas, who back Kiir, against the ethnic Nuer, who support Machar. The EU has set Kiir and Machar a March 5 deadline to strike a final peace agreement, but previous deadlines have been repeatedly ignored despite the threat of sanctions. Tuesday's clashes come a day after donors pledged $529 million towards a $1.8 billion aid appeal by the UN, with more than 2.5 million people on the brink of famine. Almost 2 million have been forced from their homes, and 500,000 of them have fled abroad to neighboring countries. According to the International Crisis Group, at least 50,000...
Welcome back, and still with Nigeria, we are joined over the phone by Ambassador Hussein Haridi, former Assistant Foreign Minister. Hello, Mr. Ambassador.
Hello, good afternoon, madam.
Thank you. Hello, sir. Now we have the situation in Nigeria where the main opposition party are condemning the postponement of the coming presidential election and calling it a major setback for democracy. How do you see why the government delayed once again the coming presidential elections?
Well, I think due to the deteriorating security situation in Nigeria after a successive wave of terrorism carried out by Boko Haram organization. So the Nigerian government saw it fit to postpone the elections for, I guess, a couple of weeks until it's in a position to provide for the security of the voters. And some organizations have criticized this decision, but I believe that I support this decision because, of course, in the last 2 months, Nigeria was a victim of successive terrorist attacks in which many Nigerians lost their lives.
Okay, we have the United States said it was deeply disappointed by the postponement of the election, and we're having John Kerry saying that warning the Nigerian government against using security concern as a pretext for impeding the democratic process. In your own opinion, why the United States is doubting the postponement of such an election, and why they expressed their concern?
As a matter of fact, I'm very surprised by the wording of the American statement. Taking into consideration the fact that the United States is leading a coalition against a terrorist group in the Middle East, we would have expected the American administration to understand the difficult situation in which Nigeria finds itself. And I don't think, I don't see any relationship between this decision, which has been taken solely on security grounds, and a talk about delaying the democratic process. I don't think that the Nigerian government was trying to delay the democratic process, but any outside observer would reach the conclusion that it was highly unlikely that, given the wave of terrorist attacks within Nigeria, that the security forces of Nigeria would be able to provide security for millions of Nigerian voters throughout the country. On the other hand, I would have expected the American administration to express its willingness to provide whatever assistance the Nigerian government would need once elections would get started. But anyhow, I personally find the American statement very disappointing.
And do you agree with the opposition group, the main opposition party in Nigeria, saying that the postponement of such a presidential election is a major setback for democracy?
Similarly, I don't think that such statements are very constructive, madam. And as I said earlier, the decision was just to postpone the elections for a couple of weeks.
Yeah. It's
not a postponement sin D. In other words, it's not. They are not postponing it indefinitely.
Yeah. It's for a limited time.
For a limited period of time. I understand they said it's either for 2 or 3 weeks until they have mastered all the security precautions that they need. There is no point of voters going to the booth and then being killed in a suicide attempt.
Yes. Well,
Yes.
Ambassador Hussein Haridi, former Assistant Foreign Minister, thank you for joining us, and welcome once again to Africa Today. And this brings us to the end of our show. I'm Dina Mamdouh. Please stay tuned.